Thank you for tuning into Hilantra podcast. Get ready for a dose of holistic wellness talks to help you achieve optimal health. Enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Hilantra, your hub for integrative health and holistic wellness. Today, we're diving into the world of healing with a truly dynamic expert. She's been guiding individuals for over 3 decades through various modalities, creating spaces for healing sessions, workshops, and even life changing international retreats. But she's not just an expert. She's a compassionate soul who believes in the power of personal responsibility for well being. Her podcast, This Is How We Heal, is a testament to that, empowering listeners to embark on their healing journey inspired by her own profound experiences. Drawing from her role as a mother, especially to a child with intellectual disabilities, she brings a unique perspective into her work. Let's dive into today's topic, discussing parents' emotional and mental well being as a result of their parental journey. Basically, we're going to talk about parents being triggered by their children and how they can deal with that. Let's welcome Stephanie Hamilton. Thank you for joining us, Steph.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow, that was a really nice introduction. Thank you for your kind words.
You're welcome, and you're an amazing individual. I mean, there's so much. I didn't do justice to the work that you've done. This is like a short version of it, but I'm sure there's a lot that we can learn from you, and I'm really excited to start. So,
Here
yes,
to
can you
speak.
share your personal journey with us and what inspired you to get into this transformative field of wellness?
Sure. So my journey starts as a young girl in Canada, the eldest child of six, and also living in an environment where my mother actually looked after six elderly people. So we had, a very big household. As the eldest child, you just automatically by default have that responsibility. And I didn't realize at the time, I used to actually resent it a lot, I have to say. I resented that position because I'm a Sagittarian. I like my freedom. And, a lot of, having that role as an eldest child did not necessarily give me that freedom to some extent. And, but it probably gave me a lot of, much needed discipline in many ways. But, yeah, so that's kind of where my journey started. And then fast forward to 1996, I moved to Saudi Arabia on my own to go work in the medical field. I was already working in Canada. I went to work there. Always had a love of, wanting to help people. And I think that comes from my mother in the sense that my mother, as you can see, looking after elderly people, she would take in animals. We had like, I don't know, we had ferrets, we had cats, we had dogs. I mean, you name it, we had it. And we did live on a farm. We lived in a house. And yeah, so I think that kind of nurturing the nurturing element, I will give credit to my mother for that in that sense, of kind of wanting to do better for people, wanting to do better for myself, wanting actually at that point not wanting to do better for myself, that came much later, but wanting to help people. So I was a fitness instructor and I worked in the medical labs. So I moved to Saudi and got married, had 3 children, and then fast forwarding to the children, gave birth to my daughter with Down syndrome, who was later diagnosed with autism as well. So she really is, I would say, a very pivotal point in my journey in that, not only did I give birth to her in 2006, but 6 months later, my thyroid blew out. When I say it blew out, it was like a full-blown, I stopped sweating, I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, but it took me 5 doctors to get to that diagnosis. And I know later on through all the work I've done now that a lot of that had to do with, at the time, my inability to express the kind of deeper emotions around giving birth to a child with, disabilities. So, not being able to embrace or to even accept grief in any way. I was very like, nope. Let's call it. I was very much a spiritual bypasser in that, in those days of like, no, we're just going to be positive and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it's all going to be amazing. And she's an incredible child. She's a actually she's double time medalist for the UAE. She's a gold medalist in rhythmic gymnastics for the UAE, which she just competed in Berlin in June. So it's been a quite the journey, but going back to her as that kind of fulcrum of where that kind of led me down a path of, starting to understand, like, how can I, um, you know, do the best for her, not healing her, but how can I do the best for her, but also, having that autoimmune condition. I believed right from the start, but it took me 14 years. I believed that it could be healed, but, like I said, I was on the medication 14 years and now fully reversed. I'm into my going into my 4th year now with no medication. So, and constant healing journey with that autoimmune. It's never really finished in the sense that it's every day is a choice to, preventative medicine, I guess, to ensure that I stay healthy. So yeah, going through that, the journey with her, it prompted me down the route of learning many different modalities, and that is kind of like the catalyst of how I came into the healing world.
Wow, that's a beautiful journey. And thank you for sharing that with us. I would love to do that, was originally our topic for today, to talk about your autoimmune disease. I would love to do another episode on that. Um, for some reason, the universe led us to choose this particular topic just when we were, deciding what we wanted to talk about. Somebody came up and said, I would love to hear somebody talk about parents mental emotional wellness and how we get triggered by our children and why and how can we deal with that. So I'm grateful to you that you accepted to take that on, and yeah, let's talk about that. So tell me about these different practices. I interview people in this podcast that come from different backgrounds and who've studied specific modalities, and some of them they just go with the one and they say, I'm so and so healer, or I practice so and so modality, and that's it. And I've had a few guests and a few people that I've met that studies different modalities, took different certifications just because of how their journey took them. And then they kind of combined all of them into something quite interesting, very personified to them, very individual to them. So, can you tell us about that journey and what is it? How do you call the healing that you provide?
Sure, I have, so I started off really if I look in the holistic field, I started off with, a modality called Orasoma, which is a series of colored bottles made of crystal plant and color energy. And I started off with that, and that was sort of like the foundation. I mean, I'm a real lover of color. I love, I feel it's a great expression of who you are. And I also love the language of color, and it really tells us a lot. And I think that kind of system allowed me to develop my intuition, to get that feel, to trust my own intuition when working with clients. It was kind of like the foundation. Then I went into yoga, and took my certification. Really was more drawn to the restorative kind of yin side, and taught that. Studied various courses, modalities over the time. Way back when I did the Orasoma, I got my Reiki certification, but it was really interesting because I feel like I had an interesting experience in New Zealand because I lived in New Zealand in between. Lived in Dubai, moved to New Zealand, moved back to Dubai. That's another story. But when I was in New Zealand, I had this really profound experience where I started to be able to see energy in terms of, like, let's say, fragmented energy, kind of looked like smoke. And then I would see energy that was complete, and it was looking like I was looking at a crystal grid, like sort of sparkles in the air. I know it's very strange. I didn't understand what this was. And then I went and took
Wow.
my yeah, I went and took my Reiki certification, and she said to me, "I feel like you're already embodying this." And that's what I felt like. It's sort of the earth spoke to me and said, "You have this gift already, but now go and, go and develop it." So Reiki, and also, tarot. When I do the Reiki, I also have elements sometimes where I've had, let's say, episodes of being a medium where someone's loved one has come in, and that for me was way out of my comfort zone. I was like, "Okay, please take this person with you when you leave." But I kind of just trust the process. But one of the most beautiful things that happened in my journey as a healer is that I used to work in a medical lab, and that, obviously adding, different potions and reading, that requires an element of intuition as well when you're, looking at people's blood. And obviously you have to have fact behind it, but there is that involved. But um I really got into essential oils a few years ago, really just absolutely loved and embraced it fully. And the more I started to use them, when I did the Reiki, I started to see plants, animals, crystals, elements coming up in people's energy fields. And so I was like intrigued. Some of these plants, I didn't know what they were. Like they would come up and I'd think, is that a plant? The name would come to me like colt's foot, and I'd be like, what the heck is that? I think it's a plant. And I would look it up, and then I would ask the person. I'd see what the list of ailments that it would, help to balance. And, let's say I don't even remember what colt's foot does now. This is the thing. I don't, it's not like I've studied this. It just comes to me, and I have to go then and research and then let the client know this is what this is what's come up for you. So let's say a plant comes in and I look it up and it says, this is for low blood pressure. And then I'll say, do you have low blood pressure? And they'll be like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, okay. So then I just trust that that plant or that crystal or that animal is there for that person, that's there to help them balance that place. So my healing has evolved in that way. I've studied breath work. So I do breath work with obviously with the yoga side, but also coaching people through the ice to help them process their grief. So many different things that come together. But basically I just follow the guidance of what gifts are unfolding for me at that time. So it's like the universe has given me this. And often what will happen is Ruby, my daughter, with Down syndrome and autism, things will happen with her. And I learn a lot from that. And then I think, okay, she'll have something will come up and I'll think, this must be needed for my work. I really have to like take notice and see where this goes. So that in a nutshell, I can say the healing I do, let's call it energy healing, but it's really has a lot of layers to it.
That is so beautiful. When I was writing your introduction, talk about, listening to the intuition. When I was writing your introduction, I said, we'll dive into the world of energy healing. And I removed the word energy for some reason. And I said, no, it just has to say healing for whatever reason it is. I just deleted that word. Now I understand why. Thank you for sharing that. And and it's so beautiful, isn't it? It looks to me like you were talking, and all I could see is exactly what you said in the beginning, is that beautiful combination of crystals and colors and like different elements coming together for you in how your journey became and formed itself. That is just like so beautiful to witness, just you telling the story and just putting those pieces together, and me just trying to visualize how it all came together. It just looks so beautiful. And the other point is that, isn't it amazing how our children come here to teach us, but we need to be able to listen. We need to know that we need to listen and we need to learn from them, maybe as much or more than we need to teach them, right?
Yeah, and I would love to hear from you how your like do you have a child that's helped you to influence your journey in this as well? I'd love to hear that.
Yes, of course. I will be sharing a lot about my journey as well as we have this conversation. But yeah, my daughter is 13, and I used to be a little bit controlling, not a little bit, maybe a lot, a lot of bit controlling in the way that how things have to be, what I need to listen. But I have been quite aware, like self-aware, since my childhood. I always had this thing in my head that kind of kept telling me, open up your mind, listen, open up your mind. There's a lot that you can learn just by listening from the inside. So I was like an A student. It was easy for me to be always on top of my class. It was easy for me to study and just understand things academically. And always it has been like that voice on the inside, like open up your mind, just listen from the inside as well. Like you're so good at listening on the outside, but you have to also listen on the inside. And that was the biggest lesson that I learned with my daughter Layal. So to answer your question, yeah, absolutely, it's been like an amazing ride, and it's still an ongoing ride. And for if it's up to me, I will slow it down as much as possible. I want to take my time.
That's
Yeah.
really beautiful. Yeah, it's really beautiful. I relate to what you said about the control because, I was like, I'm still recovering from that as well. And that has a I really feel like there's a really, strong correlation between that and the autoimmune conditions and, also yeah, I mean, people pleasing, let's say, like, it's all kinda interlinked, yeah. But it humbles you as a parent, right? It's really humbling.
Yes, yes, yes. I think we should all be open to, and like I said, we should be open when we have a child. It's not just our responsibility to teach and give. There's a lot that we can learn from them, and yeah, I mean, it's an exciting journey. So it's a blessing to have a child. I'm grateful every day, every moment that I can remember. I send gratitude for having her, and yeah. So, yes, moving forward into our topic, parenthood. So, parenthood triggers are a bit different than regular triggers when you are an adult. And if you are self aware to what triggers you, or if you're not, in both cases, I believe that parent triggers are very, very strong. Like our kids intuitively know which buttons to push, and they don't have a problem pushing them. So let's talk about this from your expertise and your journey as well. How do you explain why children become the biggest triggers for parents, and what kind of these emotional responses come up as a result of these triggers?
That's a great question. Um, the funny thing is there used to be this I used to hear this saying all the time, and it's, "Triggers are treasures." And it used to really annoy me because I was like, "Treasures? Oh my god, like, please," you know? But actually, I think there is some value in it, in that, you know our children are really I mean, they are quite literally, as you say, mirrors of us. They're mirrors of us, in our gifts, but also in our challenges. And I think that the easiest way I could say in my own experience is that whatever it is that I am not facing in my life at that given time, that I'm choosing not to process or choosing not to look at, I can almost guarantee that it's going to show up in my child, and not like, if we have a volume, let's say we have a switch, a volume that goes from 0 to 10, it's not gonna show up as volume level 3. It's gonna show up as volume level 9 or maybe 11. And I think that, it's just like and it's always at the most you know, we can a lot of us who do this type of work, we've read all the books, we have, listened to all the podcasts, we have spoken to all the experts, we've been to the coaches, and yet nothing prepares you for the trigger that happens when you've had no sleep, when you are going through some stressful change in your life, when you're in front of people that you're trying to actually pretend that everything's going well and it's not. And and it's like the child will find that little point. They will sniff it out. They have this special power to come in and literally light the match to, ignite the flame right at the time when you least expect it, and also when you're least able to handle it. And I feel like that happens repeatedly. For me, at least it has anyway. Happens again and again and again. And it's like with the hamster wheel. Do you choose to actually step off the hamster wheel and kind of take stock of where you're going, or what tools are you going to new tools are you going to bring in? Or actually, are you gonna have a little bit of humble pie as well and be authentic and say, "Look, I haven't figured all of this out. I really honestly have not figured this parenting journey out." Like, I'm 51 years old, I'm gonna be 52 in December. I'm going to my 52nd year. I have a 23-year-old, almost 23. Ruby's almost 18, and my youngest is almost 15, and I still have not figured this out.
Wow.
And I feel like those triggers are, again, even with an adult child, those triggers are still there. I don't think they ever go away. And I think the best thing you can do, or at least what I've discovered, is to, it's the humble pie. It's to go, not to put the blame on this kid is doing this and that, but it's to look like what you said. Listen inwardly. How can I navigate this better? First of all, actually, another thing I would say, and I say this to a lot of my clients. So if something comes up for a client, I'll say, okay, is this working for you or is it not working for you? It's not for me to decide. Maybe it works for them. But so it's the same thing with us, like, is this working for you, this repetitive pattern or behavior? Is it working for you? Is it not
Yes.
working for you? And what are you going to do to change it? Or do you just want to stay the same? That's really what I can summarize for that question. Like, for me, it's all about, I think, like, being brought down to your knees a little bit.
Makes so much sense, everything you said. So, whether you're on a healing journey as a parent or you're not, identifying, first of all, that, okay, this is a moment where I'm being triggered by my kid. It's important. And especially if you're on a healing journey, you know how many times it's come up in my sessions where I would, let's say, talk about my daughter in specific and say, oh, she's going through this challenge and this is what's happening to her and this is how she reacted. And then the healer I'm working with, and who does that remind you of? And these are like the most, oh my God, moments. And when I talk to her, and for me, for example, the best time to talk to my daughter is when we're driving in the car because there's that space, there's that safety, it's easy, there's like all these different stimulations from outside. And then I ask her these questions. And I ask her questions that sometimes I don't have answers to in my own journey. And if she can relate to them, I ask her the question in as simple a way as I can. And then I can take from her answer things that help me overcome that challenge. And I find that really beautiful. Like, yes, we can focus on how much the kids are triggering us and how we can, deal with that or not deal with that, or I've been doing the same thing for the past 5 years and it's nothing's changing. Of course, nothing's going to change because, like you said, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, that's the definition of insanity. It's not going to happen, especially with a child in this, situation where they're trying to push you to kind of change and like deal with that thing. But yeah, we can learn so much from them. So if you identify something as a parent, and that's something that my child has as a behavior that I can recognize in myself, then you know what? Let me ask them, what do you think? It's an alternative. How does that make you feel? And it helps you sometimes identify feelings you didn't know had. And you said something very interesting, Steph, as well, is, oh, we need to show them that we're okay and we got, everything together. And no, I mean, where do you draw the line between, your kid has to understand also that you are a human being with emotions, that it's okay for you to grieve and it's okay for you to express your emotions. Because I mean, for me, I'm a single mom, and when I got divorced, my daughter was 4, and her dad and I tried as much as possible to, not allow the divorce to kind of be ugly or, in any way negative for her, but you can't avoid it. And at that time, I realized now in hindsight that I was doing a lot of, keep your shit together kind of, attitude in front of her. And I realized my daughter hasn't seen me cry, every time I wanted to cry. And she hasn't seen me being angry in a healthy way every time I wanted to be angry in a healthy way. And that is not healthy. That is not healthy. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, I relate to what you said there. I'm separated actually from the father, of my kids, and we still live together. So, this has, been a very interesting parenting journey in that sense because it's a year and a half now that we are in that situation. Um, and I think like what you said in the beginning, I was like, we need to keep this, non-toxic and whatever. And for the most part, I think we're navigating that in a lot better way now. But I think that it's just natural to, have these feelings, especially when you're still in the same, you're living in the same container. But one thing I think that I have in the beginning when it first happened, I remember my daughter got really angry with me, my youngest daughter, and I told her like, "Please get angry at me. Like be angry with me." And be angry with me as long as you have to be angry with me. And and I felt that was really important to, to quantify her emotions, or allow her to validate her emotions in that way. Not easy though, because, I felt like, why am I getting why is it all coming on to me, But again, I tried really hard not to get into that victim mentality. And, not to say that I was perfect in doing that because I definitely slipped up, and I definitely, said things to them that I probably shouldn't have said, but again, I think the main point is always maintaining that authenticity in the sense of I'm a parent, but I mess up. Like I still once in a while I'll send my eldest daughter a reel, that I see on Instagram and I'll be like, "Oh my god, I think I did that." I really think I did that as a parent because she's older now. So I'll send it to her and I'll say, "Look, I think I did this to you. I really think I did this to you and I don't think that it was the best thing that I could have done. However, I did what I thought was best, but I wanted to acknowledge that I what I did at that time may not have been the best thing for you. And and if you want to go to a healer or if you want to, if you feel this has affected you in some way, then I'm here, to go on that journey with you." So and she always comes back and says, "Oh, mom, it's fine, whatever. I love you." And I'm like, "Okay." But I'm sure at some point we'll, go down that journey because I know that there's things that I did from my parenting that I took from my parents, from my childhood that I look at now and I think, "Whoa, that's kinda toxic," you know? And, but I think if you're willing to look at yourself honestly through that lens of parenting, that is where the healing happens, and it's not always a nice lens that you're looking through. It's not always uh in that way. So, yeah, I relate to what you said about that, being able to really kind of look at the emotions for what they are and all the whole spectrum. I'm a big advocate of that. We weren't given these emotions to shove them under the carpet. Like they're there for a reason. But it's how long you stay in them and what tools do you use to elevate.
I love what you said about when you identified something that you found was toxic in the way that you handled things with your child. You identified it and you went to her and you said, "Oh, I realize I did that." It's not just okay to ask your children for forgiveness over something that you've done that you know has hurt them. It's actually very, very important. It teaches them, first of all, again, that you're human, you make mistakes. Second of all, that they're also another human and they deserve that you also ask them for forgiveness. It's not we expect them to say sorry mommy when I do something wrong, but then why don't you show that? Why don't you become that mirror, that example to your child that if you did something wrong, admit it and tell them that, you know what, I'm sorry I did this. It wasn't nice of me. I wasn't feeling well. I did it maybe I had a long day. I wasn't feeling well. I'm tired. And then, I don't want you to think that you did something wrong and that's why I talked to you this way. You have to say forgive me. That's very, very important. And then another thing that you said is when you express, like we talked about it, you express your emotions, you allow them as well to have a safe place for them to express theirs. And actually that brought me to a question while you were talking is, have you done these healing modalities on your children, or do you think it's better if they need help for them to go and see somebody else who's not you, maybe because they're not biased, maybe because they will feel more comfortable talking to them? Have you had this experience?
Yeah, absolutely. With my eldest daughter, she went through some difficulties when she went to university in Canada. It was in 2019, and she ended up getting back into the UAE literally on the day they closed the border. So she was then living with us for that time, and I could see the effects of, her mental health sort of that over that time, like, that not so much in the beginning when she came back, but, when she went back to university that 2nd year and then decided, it wasn't for her because just of all of the different, restrictions and constraints, and it just didn't seem to work. But yes, I sent her to, Joe Jewell, actually, who is, an amazing mindful parenting, coach, and because when she moved back in, there was she left for university, so it was like, okay, she's gone, and then she moved back in, and then it's COVID, right? So, this, of course, brought up many things in itself, a lot of, uh probably triggers on not only for her, but for me as well. And so I really recognized, the importance of her going to someone else outside of me because I was like, "Look, I can't." I actually don't have the bandwidth to process this, myself, let alone to help you. Do you know what I mean? I was quite honest about that at that time. I was in my own, sort of like metamorphosis and, yeah, moving through all of that. And my youngest daughter, I've also sent her as well, and, yeah, I've done different things with different modalities with her. But actually, I have done some Reiki on my younger daughter's very open to it. So I have done some Reiki on her, but it's more when it's not to do with her and I. So if it has something to do with our relationship or something to do within the family, then I prefer to send them to someone else because how can I how can I have an objective opinion or an objective point of view? Like it's just not fair, right? So, and I have an advantage in the sense that I'm an adult and I can manipulate that information, to make her do what I want her to do, and I'm not that's not lost on me that is, something that I could do, that I could manipulate that to wanting her to be a certain way. So I'm very conscious of that. And so when it has to do with stuff with her friends or, issues that she's going through personally, then I'm happy to give her a Reiki session. Actually, we she went and had an MRI yesterday for her back. She's had a little bit of a sore back, and of course, with the insurance, they make you go through all of these stages to get physio. So she had to have an MRI, which I was like, I don't think she needs an MRI. But anyway, so we came out of that, and I kind of got some guidance when she was in the MRI. I was kind of asking, myself, my intuition saying, what do I need to do for her after being in this machine? Because, it's quite a powerful effect on your energy field, I would assume. I've never had one myself, but I was in the room and I was like, yeah, this definitely does weaken the energy field to a degree. So when she came in last night, I said, "Look, I'm going to do some tuning forks around your aura. Are you okay with that?" And she was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So she came in and I did, some tuning of her energy field with the tuning forks, and then we're on our way. So that type of thing, it's like I just go with my guidance. It's like, I was sort of like, "Yeah, you need to do this for her," and I was like, "Okay, I'm going to do it," and we move forward. But yeah, in terms of when those triggers come up, I think, it's really important if it's between you that I personally, I don't feel like we can really work on our kids ourselves. I think it's just a little bit too close, you know?
Yes, I agree with you. Everything you said, that where the amount of consciousness that you have around it is beautiful. I learned a lot from what you just said now, and I agree with you. I mean, even I tried before, and if it's only something where you're, like you said, you're clearing the space, you're clearing some kind of energy, that's very simple, and it's coming from love, right? Like, because all of the
Mm,
time during these practices, you're sending love, and that's the most, like, the easiest thing for us as parents to do for our kids is send them unconditional love. So when, if it's that, then super easy. When it goes beyond that, just the next level, it kind of becomes more distorted for me as well personally, because it starts to become like, is it me talking, or is it her, or is it my mother hat talking, or so it's a little bit more challenging to become impartial to working with her. There is another question, because you have had your kids now for 23 years. Wow. And so obviously triggers happen differently at different ages. And so, how would you say, for younger children, then teenagers, and then adults, how do the triggers differ? I mean, as in the behavior of your child that makes you get triggered. How does it differ between like these three main, let's say, stages in their life?
That's a really great question. I think if I could think back to when they were younger, when they were, at that stage where you just don't stop and it's just it seems to be just continual chaos. I like to call it organized chaos, but yeah, in any in any sense, it's that time when you're, let's say, in the early stages till they're like 5 or 6 years old. I think those triggers then, if I'm really honest, those triggers would happen when I wasn't present and also when I was overstretched, in my own personal life was like, really trying to do too much, trying to be too much, trying to, whatever, trying to be all aspects, still trying to hang on to my single life before kids, going out, doing all these things, but at the same time, still trying to be a good parent and just like, I don't know, I feel like those triggers had a lot to do with not being as self-aware as a mother and the need for self-care. I think that that stage was a little bit more to do with not really having that awareness around that. And then just kind of thinking, why is this always happening to me? And not understanding that I had a lot more control than what I really thought I did have, to shape these things and to notice these things. And I think as they got into the second half, then I started to realize, okay, I do have a little bit more control over this now. But then it went into the imbalance of control and trying to be too structured and too regimented and too, outcome focused rather than process focused. So I think the outcome, wanting a certain thing to have a certain outcome rather than just being like, okay, let's just go with the flow and let's adapt as we go. Let's check in as we go and let's like digress as we go. you know, it's okay to digress. I think that's another thing. It's like it's okay to take steps backwards. Sometimes when we take steps backwards or we stop, then that's where we actually get the most clarity. And as a teenager, I mean, there's no answer for that one. And I'm really gonna say that your children become completely different versions of themselves. Their brains going through all kinds of biochemical imbalances. And I saw a comedian years ago in New Zealand, and this guy, he said it perfectly. And he basically said, when your child's a teenager, one night, aliens come and they take your child's brain and they put it in a jar, and your child is really not. You cannot reason with this person, and there's no point ever trying to reason with them. And you have to learn a new way to navigate living with this new person. And then he says, but you will get the brain back. It comes back, but not till they're in their 20s. If you're lucky, they might get it at just before they're 20. But he said, but you do get the brain back. But basically, and when I heard that, I was like, do you know what? He's actually right. Like, because that's what I feel. I have three teenagers, or I've gone through three teenage girls, like different stages, right? And I genuinely feel that that does happen, that there, is, and it's also their personality. They're trying to assert their beliefs, their values, all of this stuff. And I think one thing have I learned, yes, there has to be boundaries and there has to be discipline, but also there has to be an element of just, I surrender. I surrender to the teenager.
Allowing, yes.
Just a yeah, because I think I saw the process with the first child and know, okay, she's come right, like the brain has come back. So it's like it does really happen like that. I can tell all those parents out there, it does come back, okay? You do get it back or they get it
That's
back.
good.
Yeah,
That's
but
good.
I think
That's
the
good. I'm
elder
sure I'm sure parents of teenagers listening to this right now, they're like, "Whew, okay, good to know."
Yeah, and I don't really know how to vocalize it in any other way, but I really, really myself related to his analogy like so well. I was like, wow, this really makes sense. But as an adult, I think that's a really interesting one because when you have a child who's now an adult, those triggers they take on a really different form. And the interesting thing is, what I feel is you realize when you're your mother. So those triggers that come, like, it's almost like I didn't see myself as my mother before that, you know what I mean? But as an adult, the triggers that come, it's sort of like, "Oh my gosh, I'm really doing this like what my mother did," you know? And I'm really, because it's like an adult to adult. I don't know, I don't, it's very hard to articulate other than I feel like your own personal, how about this? Your own personal flaws in your adult relationships become much more clear. You know, like your flaws in your friendships, your flaws in your partnerships, because this child again mirrors that that stage in your life, I guess, where it's more, they have a boyfriend, they have a relationship. So you see how they interact within that. Then you see how they interact with you. Well, how did you interact with your parents when were first in that stage of moving out, living with your boyfriend, all of these things. So it's really and we haven't hit the grandchildren stage yet, or the marriage stage. So I'm sure that's gonna bring triggers with it as well, but it's just like they are very different, but again, it comes down to awareness and also the humble pie, eating your slice of humble pie and just being like, "How can I look at this and see, whether this behavior, this trigger serves me or it doesn't serve me, and how can I change it if it does?"
Yes, that is beautifully said. So, if I were to just look at everything we talked about now, it's having the awareness to identify the triggers, identify the emotions that are coming with it, whether it's from the child or from you as a parent. Very important. There are things that you can see as parallels. I think for me, thinking, throughout this journey of being a mom, is all of the times that I said, I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be like my mom. I always found myself coming back to being like my mom, like you said. And I'm like, okay, where, like what specifically in this did I want to avoid and did I not want to do? And then understanding myself and then making those changes, because your child is always going to indirectly, of course, intuitively remind you, you need to work on this, you need to work on this. So like you said, they're mirrors of us. So whether you're going through a healing journey or not, very important to identify these triggers, identify what are the things in your child that you find as, why is my child always behaving like that, and see, and then bring it back to you, like where is it that they're mirroring that behavior from you. Because we didn't really talk about this, but there are things and traumas and that we pass on to them. And it's like, one of the reasons why I really am keen on clearing all these traumas, on healing and becoming a better version of myself, is because I don't want them passed on to my child. I want her to have an easier journey, and I want her to, whatever things she needs to work on, I don't want my traumas to be, they're stuck with her. I want to make it easier for her as well, and for me. And then, like you said, identifying the differences between their behavior when they're younger, when they're in their teenager stage, and then, yeah, for me, in a few years when they become adults, is good to have that awareness. Everything always comes back down to awareness. I mean, it's my favorite word. I say it all the time, every day, at least once. So, thank you.
No, it's so true, and I there's 3 words that I keep coming back to in any kind of healing, no matter what it is, and I always say, like, the first stage is acknowledge, which is the awareness, right? Acknowledgement that there's something there that's pressing that maybe isn't, balanced. The second word is, oh my goodness, how have I left acknowledge, accept, sorry, accept. So acceptance. So it's kind of like accepting those parts that you can control, and then the parts you can't control, obviously, you have to leave that, but then, focusing on what you can control, or not control, I would say what you can navigate, that's a better word. I'm losing this word control now because when I say that word control, I feel it becomes constricted, so what you can navigate, right? What can you navigate and what do you not have the ability to navigate? It's like you're driving through, you know, on a country road, and it's like you can navigate on the road that's set out before you, but you can't really navigate on the trees. You can't drive through the forest, right? You know, it's like you're going to, hit the trees head on. Um, and then the last word is embrace, and that is really coming down to that, uh, sort of that, let's call it self-love, or even to make it even more simple, it's just literally, integrating those darker aspects of yourself. Because we talk a lot about releasing and letting go. There's so much of that, and it's really the last year or so, year and a half, I've really come to realize we don't really release those things. They are part of our fabric. We are dualistic beings, and, you know, especially when it comes to parenting, that dualism is so prevalent. That dark and that light is so in your face. And so we don't really release those things. I don't believe we release them. I believe if they're not our energy, I believe we can release those things. Things that are not attached to us and they come within our space. Okay, we can remove those out of the way, right? It's kind of like spring cleaning. But when it comes to our own fabric and our own soul plan and our own blueprint, we actually can benefit a lot when we can actually say, okay, I see this darker part of myself. I see that I want to control. I see that I can be a manipulator. I see I can be a victim. But you know what? I'm going to embrace that. And how can I alchemize that into a gift? How can I move that into something of beauty and something of power? That can empower not only myself but other people.
That is so beautiful. I've always, not always, but in the past few months, I've been trying to kind of come to terms with this balance between the darkness and the light, and what does it mean? Because I also think that when you start going through this journey, the understanding of what the darkness and the light is not necessarily the best understanding. For me, it was initially, okay, how can I define these things? How can I understand them properly in order for me to navigate through creating a proper balance, the yin yang in my own life of that? And the way you just put it right now, it's thank you so much, because it makes so much sense. Because it's not, darkness doesn't mean evil or bad. Light doesn't mean just good. It's those, both of these energies make up your entire being. So yes, like you said, if I think I need to cut off that part, it's like you're cutting off a limb energetically. And you can't just do that. You just have to embrace it, like you said, navigate through the understanding that you get through the awareness from the first stage that you mentioned. And it's not like one and two and three. I think you always go through the three of these, like these three cycles, they become part of a bigger cycle. Okay, so I understand.
Absolutely.
Now I can integrate. And then if I integrate, I need to now learn how to navigate, but I need to understand more. Thank you.
No, and you hit the nail on the head. It's not a linear process, it's a cyclical thing, which is more that feminine energy, right? But I think the interesting thing that
Yes.
that just came to mind when you just said what you said was when you talk about the dark and light not being, good and evil per se. Um, I think of it as like literally like the earth, we have daytime and nighttime. And at the daytime, we're awake, and the nighttime, we're asleep. So it's again being awake and asleep, awareness when we're awake, not aware when we're asleep. So it's that, are you aware or you're not aware? And then you have also,
What can
what
you
can you
see?
in the daytime you can see, at nighttime you can't. So again, it's perception too. It's like, oh, in the day I can see everything, I shine a light on it so I can fully see it. It's like everything is there for me to see, but at night, it's a little bit harder to see. So for I really think it's like the same thing within ourselves, it's like, what do we see? What are we awake or aware to? What are we asleep in still? And those things, like you said, they come in cycles. Like we don't just process all of this stuff at once. It comes through the triggers of our parents, the triggers of our kids, the triggers of our partners or non-partners, our triggers of our friendships, like everything, literally everything. But yeah,
Wow, what a beautiful way to just I'm gonna have to end this because otherwise we're gonna keep talking and talking, and I want to honor your time. I know you have other appointments, and yeah, is there any last final, I don't know, message or anything that you would like to say just before we close this?
I think, like, what I'd really like to say is I wanna thank you for, first of all, for bringing up this topic because I feel like I needed to hear these things from you and even to realize them myself again. Um, just the fact that we are willing to show up with courage each and every day, I think that we have to really, honor that, you know? I think as long as you show up with the intent to, first of all, just be who you are, not to be better or to do better, just to be who you are and to allow space for those parts of yourself to be visible, to be seen, to be acknowledged, you know? If you can just show up with that intent, then I think that the rest of that path is going to unfold a lot more organically as it's meant to, beyond the realms of control. And as what a lot of us, it's like, I think it's a prevalent thing for many of us, it's just, trying to control. Um, so yeah, I think if you can just show up authentically in that way, I think that, and also to observe rather than judge. So to observe what's happening with your kids, observation is an expansive kind of point of view and judgment is very narrow because once I say, well, this child is not good at this. Well, I'm narrowing their perspective. I'm narrowing my perspective and other people's perspective on them. Or I'm not a good parent. Okay, well, you've just literally narrowed it down to this. But, oh, how could I be a better parent? How can I observe? Maybe how can I look at other people, what they're doing? How can I learn from them? How can I ask my children what they, when do they feel best or what makes them happy? You'd be surprised. Some kids say, I want more boundaries. You know, it's crazy. Like you think they don't want boundaries, but children really, they need them. And a lot of kids actually crave them. So yeah, I think that would be my message is just literally show up and allow and observe things for what they really are, and then ask the questions
Yes.
to keep moving forward.
That is so beautiful. Thank you, Steph. I so enjoyed this conversation. I can't wait to do this again with you. And I'm so grateful for all of the gems that you shared, for all of the things that, came for both of us, and hopefully for our listeners. I want to thank Samira, my friend, who actually inspired the topic, and hopefully she got also what she was hoping to get out of this. And yes, thank you so, so, so much. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you to Samira as well for letting us have this beautiful conversation. So, I really appreciate it, and, keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
Same to you. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. We hope you found it insightful and you enjoyed it as much as we did creating it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's continue creating this amazing community of holistic wellness seekers and practitioners together. See you in the next one.